Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. On today's show, we're talking about the small project trap. But first, today's show is sponsored by the Cost Segregation Guys. If you own real estate assets and have not been accelerating depreciation, you're leaving lots of money on the table. Cost segregation is the key to unlocking cash flow, even out of an existing asset. To learn more, click on the link in the show notes and you'll be connected directly with the Cost Segregation Guys. And in addition, you'll earn a discount as a result of coming directly from the Real Estate Espresso podcast. On today's show, we're talking about a trap. It's a subtle one that's paved with good intentions, conservative mindsets, and the comforting illusion of low risk. I'm talking about the trap of investing in small projects. Now, if you've been listening to the show for a while, you know that we advocate thorough underwriting, deep market research, and risk mitigation. To the novice investor, or even the experienced investor looking to pivot into a new asset class, the logical first step seems to be a small project. Maybe a single-family rental, a duplex, a tiny 4-bedroom apartment building, or a minor cosmetic flip. The logic goes something like this. If I make a mistake, at least it's a small mistake. I'll learn the ropes and then I'll scale up. But today I want to challenge that conventional wisdom. In fact, I want to argue that investing in small projects is often substantially riskier and far more exhausting than taking on larger projects. So let's unpack why that is. First of all, there's the overhead disconnect. The fundamental flaw of the small project lies in the math of the overhead. Every single real estate project, regardless of size, requires a baseline level of administrative and operational infrastructure. You need the entity structure, you need legal counsel, you need accounting, bank accounts, tax returns, insurance policies. You need to comply with local building codes, zoning laws, landlord-tenant legislation. When you buy a 150-unit apartment building or even a 50-unit apartment building, the cost of that legal review is amortized over a larger number of units. The overhead becomes a small percentage of the gross. But when you buy a duplex, the legal fee and the tax return consume a massive, disproportionate percentage of the top-line revenue. The project consumes too much overhead relative to the income it generates. You're fighting an uphill battle against fixed costs from day one. The margin for error isn't larger because the project is small. The margin for error is virtually non-existent. That brings us to the second and perhaps the more important element of the trap. It's the talent deficit. In order to operate a real estate business professionally, you need a wide breadth of highly specialized skills. You need expertise in construction management, property management, marketing, legal compliance, financial reporting, tenant relations. On a large-scale project, the asset generates enough revenue to afford top-tier professional talent. You can hire a professional property management firm with a dedicated on-site team. You can hire a dedicated leasing agent. You can afford sophisticated maintenance crews. But a small project simply doesn't generate enough income to afford that breadth of skills. So what happens? The investor is forced to compromise. They hire the cheapest property manager in town, the one-man shop operating out of the back of a pickup truck, or worse, they decide to manage it themselves. When you self-manage a small project because the project can't afford professional management, you haven't bought an investment, you've bought a job. And usually it's a low-paying, highly stressful job. And because you don't have a team, you're now the leasing agent, the bookkeeper, the garbage collector, and the guy who gets the call at 2 a.m. because the toilet's overflowing. But here's the real kicker. You probably aren't an expert in any of those fields. I know I'm not. And if you're handling your own bookkeeping, your own legal compliance, your own maintenance, you're likely delivering an inferior level of service to your customers, your tenants. When a maintenance request takes 2 weeks to resolve because you're busy at your day job or because you're trying to figure out how to fix an HVAC unit using a YouTube video, your service is inferior. That leads to higher tenant turnover, longer vacancies, and a deteriorating asset. So the net result is a business that delivers a subpar product, it fails to generate meaningful profit, and completely traps the owner in a relentless cycle of overwork. You see, financial freedom doesn't come from owning a collection of small fragmented liabilities that require your daily physical intervention. True wealth is created by building systems and scaling assets to the point where they can support professional infrastructure required to run them cleanly. If you find yourself trapped in this cycle of overwork, grinding away on small projects that yield little to no cash flow after accounting for your own sweat equity, it's time to change the playbook. Stop looking for what you can afford to own and start looking at what the deal can afford, and if it's structured correctly at scale. What the deal can afford if it's structured correctly at scale. Bring in joint venture partners, raise syndication capital, and go after the projects that can actually afford the professional team they deserve. Think bigger, scale faster, your sanity and your balance sheet will thank you. As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow.